Okay, so here's a puzzle that just seems to break your brain when you first hear it. Your government can legally print money, like literally create it out of thin air. So why on earth is it trillions of dollars in debt? It's a paradox that makes no sense on the surface. Let's break it down. I mean, really, think about it. If you had a machine in your basement that could legally print cash, you'd never need a credit card, right? You'd never take out a loan. You'd just print what you need and call it a day. But for some reason, governments who have that exact power, I mean, really, think about it. If you had a machine in your basement that could legally print cash, you'd never need a credit card, right? You'd never take out a loan. You'd just print what you need and call it a day. But for some reason, governments who have that exact power don't do that. Instead, they borrow. A lot. And when I say a lot, I mean a staggering amount. Just look at the US national debt. It's over $34 trillion, and that number is ticking up every single second. So what's going on here? Are the people in charge just making a colossal mistake? Or is there something bigger at play that most of us were never taught? Well, it's the second one. The choice to borrow money instead of just firing up the printing press isn't an accident. It's a deliberate system, a mechanism with very specific rules and very real consequences. And honestly, once you understand how it works, you'll never look at the economy the same way again. So, the first and probably most obvious reason governments don't just hit print all the time is because there's a huge, dangerous catch. And that catch has a name we all know: inflation. Yeah, they can create money, but that power, it's like playing with fire. So imagine the government just prints a bunch of new money to pay its bills. That cash doesn't just disappear, it floods into the economy. All of a sudden, you have way more money chasing the exact same amount of stuff: cars, food, houses. What happens? Well, prices have to go up. Your dollar just doesn't buy as much as it did yesterday. A tiny bit of inflation is one thing, but when a government gets too comfortable with that printing press, it can trigger something far more destructive. It can lead to hyperinflation, which is basically an economic death spiral. And this isn't just some textbook theory. It's happened. In Germany, back in the 1920s, the government printed money so relentlessly that their currency became basically worthless. It got so bad that people were literally using wheelbarrows, not wallets, to carry enough cash just to buy a single loaf of bread. Or if you want a more modern example, just look at Zimbabwe in the 2000s. The government actually printed a $100 trillion bill. Think about that. And by the time it rolled off the press, it was worth next to nothing. That right there is the raw, destructive power of the money printer when it's completely unleashed. So that brings us to the second and maybe more interesting reason governments borrow. It's not just about running away from hyperinflation, it's actually a powerful tool for control. The best way to think about it is like the difference between a flood and a faucet. See, printing money is the flood. You open the floodgates and a massive, unpredictable wave of new money just slams into the system. But borrowing, that's the faucet. When a government borrows, it's taking money that already exists from investors and just redirecting it. The total amount of money in the system doesn't explode. It's controlled, it's measured. And the main tool they use for this is the government bond. All a bond is, really, is a fancy IOU. The government says, hey, lend us $1,000 now, and we promise to pay you back in 10 years, plus a little extra for your trouble. It's a simple, predictable transaction that keeps the funds flowing without causing chaos. So you can think of borrowing as a kind of thermostat for the economy. The government is basically saying, look, we need to spend more money, but we can't risk overheating the economy and letting prices spiral. So instead of creating a bunch of new money from scratch, we'll just use money that's already out there. Okay, but here's where the whole thing gets really wild. Government debt isn't just a tool to dodge inflation. It's not a mistake or a bug in the system. It's a fundamental feature. In fact, it's the very foundation that the entire modern financial world is built on. So who exactly is the government sending all these IOUs to? The answer is, well, pretty much everyone. We're talking foreign governments like China and Japan, major banks and corporations, the pension funds that manage retirement money for millions of people, and even regular folks like you and me who invest. And the scale of this web is just immense. Japan holds over $1 trillion in US debt. China and the UK hold hundreds of billions. Now, they're not doing this to be nice. They're doing it because US government debt is widely considered to be the single safest investment on the entire planet. And this creates something pretty incredible. By borrowing, the US government creates this super stable, super reliable asset that the rest of the world uses as a foundation. It gets other countries financially invested in the health of the US economy. After all, you're not going to try and sink a ship that you have $1 trillion invested in, right? Here's another way to look at it. The government is the creator of the economic game, and money is how you keep score. Now, sure, the game creator could just give every player infinite points, but what would happen? The game would instantly become pointless and chaotic. So instead, they create a system of rules, borrowing and lending, to keep the game stable and worth playing for everyone involved. Now, I know this can all sound like some abstract economics class, but I promise you, this system has a direct and really profound impact on your life. On your personal finances, it connects the decisions made at the highest levels right down to the cash in your wallet. Just follow the chain. The government borrows money. It promises to pay that money back with interest. So where does the repayment money come from? It comes from taxes. And where do tax dollars come from? They come from the economic activity of all of us, from your future work, your future productivity. That debt is essentially a claim on our collective economic future. And when that debt keeps piling up, the consequences usually don't show up as some big, sudden crash. It's more like a slow, grinding erosion. It looks like gradually higher taxes over the long run, or cuts to public services. And it looks like a currency that just quietly buys a little bit less every single year. So what's the big takeaway for you in all this? It's that the system is designed to have a little bit of inflation. It's built to slowly erode the value of holding plain old cash. That's why simply saving cash in a bank account can feel like you're running on a treadmill. Historically, the way people have stayed ahead of this quiet erosion is by owning assets that hold real value over time. All right, so let's tie this all together. Let's get back to that original question. Why go through this whole complicated, messy process of borrowing trillions of dollars when the money printer is sitting right there? It really comes down to understanding what the machine is actually designed to do. When you see it this way, government debt stops looking like a sign of failure or incompetence. You realize it's a deliberate mechanism. It's the chosen tool because it helps control inflation, it creates that foundational asset for the entire global financial system, and it weaves together the very international relationships that our modern world depends on. It's not a bug, it's a feature. The news headlines about trillions in debt suddenly sound less like a five-alarm fire and more like, well, business as usual. But, and this is the big but, this all leads us to the ultimate question we're all facing now. The system is built on this foundation of debt, for sure. But what happens when that debt grows too big to handle?